There's a moment every single day that decides the course of your life. It doesn't come with trumpets. It doesn't wait for inspiration. It doesn't care if you feel ready. It's the moment you choose to obey yourself or betray yourself. Most people miss it because they're waiting to feel like doing the thing. They want lightning. They want motivation. They want a sign. But discipline doesn't knock. It doesn't ask. It commands. And you either answer or you delay the man you were born to become. Napoleon Hill said, self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts. If you do not control your thoughts, you cannot control your needs, your desires, your wants. But this control doesn't arrive in grand gesture. It arrives in a moment so small, so subtle, it's nearly invisible. It's the decision you make before the world wakes. It's the act you repeat when no one claps. It's the ritual you perform in silence every single day that sculpts the mind, the will, and eventually the man. This is not about stacking habits. This is about initiating yourself into order. And there is one habit, one sacred, simple discipline that if you do it daily will reset your mind, reforge your will, and restore command over your own nature. It doesn't require talent. It doesn't require time. It only requires that you show up the same way, every day. This is the ancient path of self-respect. And every warrior, visionary, or builder who ever rose above the noise walked it. You want to change your life? Don't look for the next tactic. Return to the ritual. You didn't lose your discipline. You lost your edge, the silent contract between your higher self and your lower self. It starts small. You skip one day. You tell yourself you'll do it tomorrow. You rationalize, I deserve rest before you've even earned war. But that's how the decay begins. Not with a failure, but with a compromise. And the moment you choose comfort over command, a part of you weakens. Not visibly, not dramatically, but deep inside. Something fractured. This is the collapse most men never note because it feels harmless. Just a delay, just a small skip, just one misrep, one snoozed alarm, one undone promise. But the truth, every time you betray your own word, your identity erodes. This is the great lie of modern self-help. That motivation is the fuel. That you need to feel inspired before you take action. That you can build an empire while obeying your emotion. That lie has cost men their greatness because motivation is a wave. It rises and falls. It's a mood, not a method. If your discipline is dependent on how you feel, you are not free. You are a slave to the winds of circumstance. You will rise when things are exciting and collapse when they are not. You will start strong and finish nothing. That's not discipline. That's dependence. And the world is filled with men who started with fire but couldn't hold it. Men who had dreams but no rituals. Men who had plans but no practice. Men who talked like warriors but obeyed like children. They burned out. They faded. And they were forgotten. Let me speak clearly now. Discipline is not born from excitement. It is born from silence, from doing what must be done, even when your blood is cold, especially when your blood is cold. The great ones are not motivated. They are prepared. They are trained. They have built inner systems so unshakable that when the emotion is gone, the ritual remains. There's a kind of man who rises before the sun and does the hard thing not because he wants to, but because he said he would. That man becomes dangerous because his strength no longer comes from his mood. It comes from a code, a quiet daily oath, a line drawn in the dirt of his own mind. And every time he keeps that line, even when it hurts, even when it's dull, even when no one sees, he evolves. This is the first war, not with the world, but with the self that waits for comfort, with the voice that says, maybe later, with the internal enemy that wants softness, convenience, and ease. That voice isn't loud. It's cunning. It says things like, you've been good lately. You deserve a break. Just one day off won't hurt. No one will know if you skip it, but you'll know. And every time you say yes to that voice, your foundation cracks. Not enough to see, just enough to sink. There's a term Napoleon Hill used, hypnotic rhythm. It's the force of repetition, for better or for worse. It's how the undisciplined slowly destroy themselves, not in explosions, but in loops. The loop of delay, the loop of excuse, the loop of almost. It's not evil. It's not chaos. It's just passivity. And passivity is how dreams die, quietly. But the same force that destroys can be used to rebuild. This is the hidden power of one daily discipline, one non-negotiable ritual, one sacred act done the same way, at the same time with the same intent. Not because it's trendy, not because it's exciting, because it anchors your identity to action, not emotion. This habit becomes a mirror. You look into it and ask, did I show up today or did I run? You don't need more goals. You don't need more dopamine. You need one promise kept. Over time, the loop becomes holy. The repetition becomes armor. And the man you used to be can no longer survive in the presence of your new rhythm. Discipline is not a feeling. It's a return to the mat, to the breath, to the pen, to the page, to the silence before the storm. And when you return enough times, a strange thing happens. The internal enemy begins to die. Not with a scream, but a silence. Because he no longer believes he can break you. You've become too consistent, too calm, too forged. You no longer try to be disciplined. You just are. That's the shift from doing to becoming. And it begins with ending the addiction to motivation. You've been taught to chase feelings, to wait until you're ready, to trust your energy, your mood, your vibe. But here's the truth. Your emotions are weather. Your rituals are architecture. One changes with the wind. The other holds, even in the storm. This is why your discipline cannot depend on how you feel. It must be built into something higher, something sacred, something unshakable. And that something is not routine. Ritual. A routine is mechanical. It's what the world sells you. Schedules, hacks, color-coded planners. But a ritual is spiritual. It's what you inherit from the oldest part of yourself. A ritual is what you return to, even when your mind resists, especially when your mind resists. It's the act that tells your body, this is who we are now. Not based on motivation, not based on convenience, but based on command. Every ancient culture had its ritual. Morning fires, warrior chants, silent meditations before the hunt. Not because they had nothing better to do, but because they knew, without ritual, man forgets who he is. Modern man has replaced ritual with entertainment. He wakes to screens, not silence. He reacts before he remembers. And by the time he checks in with himself, the day already owns him. But the one who reclaims ritual reclaims order. And order is power. Because when your day begins with ritual, not reaction, the world can no longer dictate your rhythm. You become the center, not the noise. This is why you need one sacred habit. One practice that begins your day before the world touches you. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be long, but it must be deliberate. You must perform it as if your future depends on it, because it does. This is your temple, not made of stone, but of attention, breath, and intention. And every time you enter it, with reverence, not rush, you remind yourself, I am in command of my mind, my body, my time. That is no small thing. It's how warriors are built. Not by hype, but by order. Ritual creates rhythm. Rhythm becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. Read that again. Let's bring this down to earth. Imagine a man who, every morning, kneels by his bed for 60 seconds. No phone, no words, no distraction. He just kneels, eyes closed, breath steady. Why? Because in that silence, he reclaims his self. He steps into the observer. He says, with his posture, before the day begins, I begin. That is a ritual, and it changes him. Not because it's flashy, but because it's consistent. It's the same with the man who writes one page every morning, even when nothing comes. Or the woman who trains at 5 a.m., not for AB, but for alignment. These people are not following a trend. They are practicing self-respect. And self-respect is the root of all discipline. But Napoleon Hill once wrote that definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all achievement. Ritual is how you practice definite. It's how you stop drifting. Because when you perform a sacred habit at the same time, in the same way, every single day, you send a message to your subconscious. This is the center. This is the core. Everything else revolves around this. And your mind, once chaotic, begins to settle. You begin to focus. You begin to remember. Not everything is worthy of your energy. Not everything deserves your attention. Only the center does. Only the ritual. Only the act that calls you back to the architect you're becoming. This is the hidden truth of high performance. It doesn't come from effort alone. It comes from alignment. And alignment only happens when your actions match your identity, consistently, without negotiation. That's what a ritual is. Identity. In motion. It's how you stop trying to be disciplined and start being disciplined, not through pressure, through presence. And the more you return to that presence, the more you evolve. So here's the question. What is the one sacred act you can commit to every day, no matter what? Not to get results, but to remind yourself who you are. Make it your temple. Make it your return. Because when the world is unstable, your ritual is your refuge. And when everything else collapses, the news, the moods, the chaos, the noise, your ritual is the one thing that holds. That's how unshakable discipline is born. Before Think and Grow Rich was turned into a checklist for dreamers, it was a spiritual manual for self-governance. Napoleon Hill didn't write about success the way we speak of it now. He wasn't interested in dopamine hacks or morning routines. He was a strategist of the inner empire, the kingdom within a man that must be conquered, ruled, and maintained, or it falls. One of Hill's greatest insights is buried not in his most popular work, but in his most dangerous one, Outwitting the Devil. In it, Hill sits face to face with the archetype of evil, not a red demon, but a psychological force that speaks in terms of drift, disorder, and passivity. The devil in that book is not a monster. He is a voice, a suggestion, a whisper of permission to compromise. He says, the one who is slow about making up his mind, or who permits others to do his thinking for him, is easy prey for the devil. And what is the weapon used against him? Definiteness, purpose, routine, ritual, discipline. Hill called this the master key to riches, not money, but internal wealth. The kind that cannot be taken from you. The kind that turns a wandering man into a commander. Let's pause here and reflect. Why do most people fail, even when they know what to do? Because they have not forged a system of self-order. They rely on chance, on hype, on external momentum. Hill understood this. The undisciplined man is ruled by every suggestion but his own. He wakes up and checks the weather of his mood. He waits to be inspired. He consumes more than he creates. And slowly, the hypnotic rhythm takes over. The invisible loop of passive days, wasted hours, and inner drift. Hill warned us of this rhythm. He called it the habit force. It's neutral. It doesn't care who you are. It just magnifies your direction. If you drift, it deepens the drift. If you discipline, it deepens the order. Read that again. This is why Hill said, with absolute clarity, you either control your mind or it controls you. There is no halfway compromise. There is no neutral ground. You are either building a rhythm or being buried by one. And that's what most people don't realize. Your one daily habit, that small act you repeat each morning, is not just about building something. It's about choosing sides. You're either submitting to chaos or you're standing as the architect. Let's ground this in practice. Hill spoke often of the power of a definiteness of purpose, but he paired it with definiteness of plan. That plan wasn't theoretical. It was rhythmic. If you read closely, Hill's real advice wasn't just believe. It was write your definite purpose down. Say it aloud, twice daily. Align your daily actions with it. Track yourself. Adjust. Return. This is not fluff. This is structure. And structure is the birthplace of freedom. You want to feel stronger? You want to move with clarity? Then you must do what Hill taught. Train your subconscious through rhythm. Because the subconscious does not respond to hype. It responds to repetition. That's why your daily habit is more than a task. It's a message to your subconscious identity. Every time you keep your daily discipline, you reaffirm, I am sovereign. I obey my own command. I do not drift. And over time, your subconscious believes. Your self-talk changes. Your posture shifts. Your energy sharpens. You stop trying to be disciplined because discipline has become your native tongue. This is what Hill meant when he said, the man who masters himself through self-discipline can master anything else. Because in mastering yourself, you no longer need permission. You don't need motivation. You don't need applause. You operate from a place of authority, not reaction. And authority is rare because authority is not loud. It is still. It is precise. It is decisive. That's the real gift of discipline. It makes you clear in a foggy world. And clarity, not hype, is the source of real power. So here's what Hill would tell you now. If he could whisper into your mind, choose one act, anchor it in time, Make it a command, not a preference. Perform it the same way, with the same intention, every single day, and guard it with your life. That's not just a habit. It's a shield. It's a sword. It's your line in the sand. Because once your rhythm is forged, truly forged, the hypnotic pull of chaos loses its grip. You don't need more willpower. You need more ritualized definite. That's how the devil is outwitted. Not with emotion, but with self-order. Here it is, the habit that, if done daily, with precision, with silence, with full presence, will forge unshakable discipline in you. The act of keeping a personal appointment with yourself. At the same time, in the same way, every single day. Simple? Yes. But do not mistake simplicity for weakness, because this habit is not about the action. It's about the agreement. Every day, at a chosen hour, you do something, the same thing that was promised in advance. You don't negotiate. You don't move it around. You don't check how you feel. You just show up. It could be writing a page. It could be walking in silence. It could be reading your purpose statement aloud. It could be kneeling in stillness for 10 minutes. It could be lifting, journaling, breathing, building, rehearsing. The act itself is flexible. But the agreement is not. Because here's what most people don't understand. The habit doesn't matter nearly as much as your devotion to the timing, presence, and return. What you're actually doing is training yourself to become a person who shows up on command. Not when it's easy, not when it's new, but when it's time. That's the difference between amateurs and professionals, between dabblers and architects, between wanderers and warriors. Professionals move by internal clock, not emotional tide. And that's why this habit is so powerful, because it installs a new identity inside you, one ritual at a time. Let's make this concrete. Imagine a man who at 6 a.m. sharp sits at a desk every single day to write a single page. He doesn't wait for inspiration. He doesn't skip because he's tired. He doesn't reschedule. He just shows up. Same time, same ritual, same command. Over time, something happens. He stops thinking about whether or not he will do it. There is no more debate, no more mental chess match. There is only the appointment. And eventually, it stops being what he does. It becomes who he is. That's the shift you're after. Because once your identity accepts, I'm the type of person who does this, no matter what, the internal resistance fades. And what was once effort becomes rhythm. What was once friction becomes flow. But here's the catch. You cannot skip. You cannot delay. You cannot explain it away. You must protect the time as if it were sacred, because it is. It's the moment you build the muscle of obedience to self. And if you cannot obey your own word, nothing else you build will last. This habit, this daily self-appointment is a mirror. It shows you who you are under pressure. It reveals your patterns. It breaks the illusion that you're disciplined in general. There's no such thing. There is only, did you show up today or not? And that binary answer, yes or no, is how the foundation of your identity is laid. You want confidence? Keep the appointment. You want clarity? Keep the appointment. You want power, consistency, alignment, respect for yourself? Keep the damn appointment. Because here's what happens when you don't. You tell your subconscious, my word is optional. You reinforce the pattern of drift. You become unstable, not outwardly, but inwardly. And eventually, you stop trusting yourself. That is how the erosion begins. But when you keep it, you rise, you harden, you become clear. And slowly you start to feel it. I no longer need motivation. I have returned. Return to the hour. Return to the silence. Return to the act. Return to the identity I chose and forged. That's why this is the one habit that changes everything. Not because of what it looks like, but because of what it reorders in you. Every empire has a heartbeat. This is yours. Protect it, defend it, and do not miss. There comes a point in your evolution where you stop asking, how do I stay disciplined? And you start declaring, I am the kind of person who never breaks his own word. That's identity. Not a mood, not a phase, not a tactic. It's the internal reality you live from. And until your discipline becomes identity, it will always be negotiable. This is why most people fail. They treat discipline as a tool, not as a truth. They use it when it suits them. They tap into it when the conditions are favorable. But the master doesn't use discipline. He becomes it. And that shift changes everything. Because once you embody discipline as identity, you no longer fight the same battles every morning. You no longer need reminders or resolutions. You operate from alignment, not argument. You become automatic in the right direction. This is where the one habit we revealed, that sacred self-appointment, becomes more than an action. It becomes a symbol, a mirror that reflects back to you. This is who I am now. This is what I do, no matter what. And every time you return to it, you reinforce the structure of a new self. Read that again. Every time you keep your word to yourself, your subconscious rewires to match. This is identity-based discipline. It doesn't bend. It doesn't argue. It doesn't care if you're tired, bored, overwhelmed, or uninspired. It simply executes the code because you wrote the code, and you are now the architect. Let me tell you something most won't. Your entire future hinges on whether or not you can become the kind of person who follows through without needing to be convinced. No fanfare, no Instagram quotes, no emotional hype. Just this, command given, command obeyed. That is the highest form of power. Not control over others, but control over self. Imagine waking up and knowing, truly knowing, that whatever you committed to, you will do. Not because you feel like it, but because your identity is now wired for execution. That's the internal freedom most people will never experience. They'll always second guess. They'll always seek motivation. They'll always need to get back on track. But you are the track. Because you become the kind of person who holds the line, regardless of the storm. This isn't about perfection. It's about pattern. You will stumble. You will fall short. But your return is automatic. Because your identity is anchored. There's an ancient symbol in Stoic philosophy, the inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius spoke of it often, a mental fortress that cannot be breached by external chaos. That citadel is discipline as identity. It is the place within you that cannot be shaken, because it's built from your own word, repeated in ritual, proven in the silence. And once you build that fortress, you become a weapon, because the world can no longer move you. The opinions of others no longer control you. Your environment no longer dictates your output. You have become self-determined. Let me offer you a metaphor. Discipline at first is like carrying a heavy sword. You lift it with trembling hands. You drop it. You doubt yourself. You want to put it down. But with time and repetition and commitment to form, the sword becomes light. It becomes part of you. It moves as you move. You forget it's even there because it has merged with who you are. This is the journey from burden to embodiment, from discipline as effort to discipline as nature. And once you live here, your possibilities change. Not because the world got easier, but because you became exact. And exactness creates freedom. So here's the mirror now. What if you never broke your word to yourself again? What would change? Who would you become? And what version of you would finally be laid to rest? Because at the root of all transformation is this unspoken truth. Every time you keep a personal promise, the old version of you loses ground. And the new version, the one that walks in clarity, silence, power, takes the throne. Not because you forced it, but because you became it. There's a clock you don't see, but it sees you. It doesn't tick like the others. It doesn't measure hours or deadlines or obligations. It measures becomings. And every day, it strikes one silent hour, the moment of your return. You know when it's coming. You feel it, even if you don't name it. It's the pause before the task, the resistance, the breath. And in that space, you face the mirror. Did I show up for myself today? Not for the world, not for the checklist, not for the illusion of progress, but for the ritual that makes me real. That's the mirror, and it never lies. It reflects not just what you did, but who you are becoming through your repetitions. If you're honest, you've already seen it. The version of you that runs, the version that delays, the version that breaks promises in silence and hopes no one notices. But the mirror noticed, and it's not here to punish. It's here to reveal. Because only when you see yourself clearly can you take the key. And the key is this: one habit, done daily, with presence, not preference. One sacred act you return to, not because you feel like it, but because you've made a vow. That act, that single repeated return, is how you rebuild the architecture of your life. Not with noise, but with rhythm. Not with force, but with form. The form of one man or one woman, standing in a quiet room, facing their own resistance. And doing the thing anyway, that is power. And that power doesn't erupt. It accumulates in silence, in structure. In days so mundane they become holy. You will not be celebrated for this. No one will clap for your 6 a.m. ritual. No one will witness your quiet return. No one will see you say yes to yourself for the 100th time, but you will. And one day, not far from now, you'll look in that mirror and realize you don't flinch anymore. You don't wait anymore. You don't drift anymore. Because you are the return. The ritual is no longer what you do. It's who you are. So I leave you with this. Look at the clock. Face the mirror. Take the key. You don't need another method. You need a vow. One small act. Repeat it without excuse. That's how you build unshakable discipline. And no one can do it for you. You've carried the code all along. Now you have the key, use it.